Hey leaders, welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. This is the podcast that adds value to leaders who multiply value to others. My name is Mark Cole. I'm the CEO of Maxwell Leadership. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the greatest gap in life. That's the gap between I should and I did. John calls that the Procrastination Gap. Today, John is going to talk about this gap and when good timing becomes procrastination. Then he'll teach us the 3 P's that stop procrastination. Once John is done with his lesson, I'll be joined again with my co-host Chris Goede, and we will discuss ways and how to apply these principles to our leadership, to our life, and to our organization. Now, as always, we have provided you with a bonus resource, which is a fill-in-the-blank worksheet that accompanies John's lesson. If you would like to access that PDF, please visit maxwellpodcast.com/gap and click the bonus resource button. And for those of you today that would like to join us visually for the podcast, you want to see it and listen to it, you can go to maxwellpodcast.com/YouTube. Now here is John Maxwell.
H. Jackson Brown, who's done a lot of the what you call real small, quote, portable books, said the biggest gap in the world is between I should and I did. Success simply takes good ideas and puts them into action. What the free enterprise system really means is that the more enterprising you are, the more free you are. What this country needs is less emphasis on free and more on enterprise. In other words, we need more emphasis upon the doing process, which will obviously give us the freedom. Many years ago, I read a quote by, I think it was then the president of Atari, the game president guy, and he said, anyone who ever has taken a shower has had an idea. And isn't that true? How we're in the shower, we're singing, we're soaping up, and all of a sudden we think of all these things. Oh, yes, that would be really good. He said the issue is not have you ever had an idea in the shower. How many of you had an idea in the shower before? Okay, yeah, we've all been there. Okay. He said that isn't. He said it's what we do after we dry off with that idea that counts. And I don't know, what is it? Is it when we dry off that the idea kind of dries off too and we kind of erase that idea? I'm not sure, but here's what I know. Every day I run into people who say, boy, I wanted to do that, or boy, I would like to do that. And I always look at them and say, well, why don't you? And, well, I may someday. Well, when? Well, I don't know, but I think it's a good idea, don't you? Well, yeah, it's a good idea. And I find that they have a very difficult time nailing down when they're going to do sometimes what they really want to do. And it's all because of this issue of procrastination. Well, I think we probably have all heard, but it's such a good illustration here at the beginning of this lesson. The African parable that says every morning in Africa a gazelle wakes up, and it knows that it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. And every morning a lion wakes up and it knows that it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you had better be running. And that's really true in life. It's true for all of us. Okay. A lot of times when I see a person that procrastinates, here's their most common excuse. And you just see if you haven't heard this before. Somebody that they just don't get it done, okay? But they procrastinate, and they'll say, well, the timing's not right yet. I'm just waiting for an opportune time. Now, this is a real clutch point for people who procrastinate. And I want to stop here for a moment and say that timing is very important. In fact, in my 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership book, I have one of the laws is the law of timing. And so we all understand that when to lead is as important as what to do and where to go. That's a very important law. So the law of timing does come in, but how do we know when we call it a timing issue, when it's really not a timing issue, but it's really a procrastination issue? How do we know? How do we know when it's not really timing that we're waiting on, but it's just the fact that we procrastinate? Okay, 5 things. When missing deadlines becomes a regular occurrence. In other words, we're not talking about a one-time issue or this happens once in a while. We're talking about the fact we regularly miss deadlines. Now, this isn't a timing issue. This is a bad habit issue. Or number two, when you often ask, when is the latest that I can do this, instead of when is the earliest that I can tackle it? In other words, do we look for the latest or do we look for the earliest? Or number three, when you frequently come across old files and to-do lists that you haven't missed for weeks or months. All of a sudden you say, oh my goodness, wow, I was supposed to do that. That was really urgent 3 months ago. Wow, I'm glad I discovered that again. I can see a few of you are kind of grimacing on that one, like, oh, ouch, ooh, that hurts a little bit. Hurts us all, okay. Or number four, when items on your to-do list continually roll over to the next day, next week, or the next month. In other words, you just say, boy, last week I had this on my to-do list. It's still on my to-do list. I'm not getting to it. Or number five, when items get crossed off your list, not because they've been completed, but because they're too out of date to be done. I say, all of a sudden you say, summer's passed, hasn't it? And I was supposed to do that this summer. So these are ways that you can kind of tell when all of a sudden it's not an issue of timing anymore. It's an issue of, wow, I'm procrastinating. So let me give you three of my favorite definitions of procrastination. Procrastination is the fertilizer that makes difficulties grow. That's very true. You show me a procrastinator, and I'll show you a person that always has. It gets kind of tough for him. Ed Young says procrastination is the thief of time, and Victor Kiam said procrastination is opportunity's natural assassin. That's my favorite definition. It is a natural assassin. You show me a person that procrastinates, and I'll show you a person that will never, ever, ever meet opportunity. I was thinking about this one day because I believe that successful people, one of the reasons they become successful is because they have the ability to see and seize opportunity. You show me any person that's very successful in any kind of business, and I'll show you a person that once that opportunity comes, they see it, they smell it, they move on it very quick, and it's theirs. Now, what everybody else is doing is they're kind of looking around and they're saying, boy, I hope my day comes. Can I tell you something? Your day comes almost every day. It's not an issue of your day comes. It's not an issue of opportunity comes. Please never think that the person that makes it gets all of the breaks and all the opportunities, and the person that doesn't make it, their opportunity never came. Your opportunity came. Can I tell you what your problem was? You never seized it. You never grabbed hold of it. It's kind of like the guy who said one time, he says, while we're waiting for our opportunity to come, we're out in the backyard looking for a 4-leaf clover. We're trying to get lucky. We're just kind of hoping somebody hands us something. That isn't the way life is. Life is to the person who really, success comes to the person who really understands how to seize opportunity. And the reason I love that last definition of procrastination is I have never known a procrastinator. This is a bold statement. I've never known a procrastinator to be highly successful in life. Never have. And it's because they are always waiting for another moment or another time. And while they're waiting, someone else grabs the ball, runs for the touchdown, takes the business opportunity, takes the potential that's there, and seizes it and does something with it. A lot of times people come to me and say, well, what I need is just a few more hours in my day. You don't need any more hours in your day. You know what? Life is very fair in this area, isn't it? We all get the same amount. I don't know anybody that some people get 27 hours and some people get 22 hours. And somebody will say, well, if I just had more hours. Can I tell you something? Quit wishing that, because guess what? In the history of mankind, it really doesn't happen. You don't get more hours. So the question is not, how can I make a 24-hour day, a 30-hour day? The question is, how can I take the time that I have and seize it and do the most with it? Now, there are 3 P's that stop procrastination. The first word that will really stop procrastination is the word purpose. I have found that people that have high purpose in life do not procrastinate. Why? They have something important to do. The second word that begins with a P that stops procrastination is priorities. I have found that people that have understood how to prioritize their life until they do what is most important also tend to be able to beat and defeat this procrastination issue And the third word that starts with the letter P is passion. I have found that people with passion really have something burning within them to do are people that do not procrastinate.
Hey, podcast listeners! How would you like to be equipped with the tools to continue your personal growth and refine your strengths and weaknesses, all while being surrounded by other growth-minded leaders like yourself? You may have heard of our International Maxwell Conference, or IMC. It's our biannual event in which Maxwell Leadership certified team members come from all around the world to grow and learn together. IMC this August is the first time we're opening the event to the public by kicking the event off with our first ever Personal Growth Day. This is a 1.5-day event on August 29th through the 30th in Orlando, Florida. And it's designed to dig deeper into who you are and how you tick so that you can become the best version of yourself. If you are unable to attend Personal Growth Day in person, we also offer virtual access to the event. If you would like to participate in a one-of-a-kind experience and stand shoulder to shoulder with growing leaders who will sharpen your skills and equip you to create powerful, positive impacts in your life, go to maxwellleadership.com/personal growth day to learn more or get your ticket. We will see you there.
Hey, welcome back, podcast listeners, podcast viewers. We're so glad to be in studio with you today. We're so glad you're part of this community, part of this family. Chris, you and I were talking. We've worked around John for a long time, a combined probably 40-ish years,
Yeah, 40
right?
plus, yeah.
40 plus. Yeah. And I'll tell you, if anybody lives this lesson out that we're studying right now, it's John Maxwell. We were laughing because recently John and Margaret were interested in a home in West Palm Beach. And when I say interested, there's interest and then there's action. We're interested, let's go ahead and sign the contract, right? Yeah. And John, in every area of his life, as long as I've known him, and we've combined 40 years plus, 22 years of my own, John lives this lesson out. Yeah. And guess what? I love that he can teach with that integrity. Now, let me be a little integrous. Me and Chris was talking about, like, maybe there's some of you that every email's done. John has a 24-hour rule that he and Linda, they're going to get back to you within 24 hours. Maybe some of you are like Chris and I going, oh, guilty of point number 1. Yeah. Oh, yep, 2. I'm a little 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Check. I got work to do. Because truly this leadership game that we're playing and this role of owning so much and being responsible to so many really sometimes get in the way. And it's not laziness that drives that procrastination. Sometimes it's priority. Sometimes it's timing. And so I read this, yes, convicted, but also a little bit more clearly how I can be better so that procrastination does not paralyze my leadership.
Yeah, I think this is something to where perception comes in, right? I do agree with you. We both have a challenge with this. And I think as leaders, we have to manage this. That's the word that I want you guys to take away is how is Mark going about managing this? How are you going to go about managing it? Because I think most leaders are biased, with their own skill set and the way that they do things and the way that they evaluate themselves. And but if they got real, it's probably an issue to where most of us deal a little bit with that. It was funny, you said with John, the difference between interest and action. I don't even know if there's a line between those two words with John, right? It's like, and so to your point, we've seen him do a lot of very successful, impactful things because he lives this message out. And what I want to talk about, though, that I've seen and you have been able to ride shotgun for so many years is this, where he talks about see and then sees an opportunity. Mm-hmm. We used their home as an example, but you see it every day when it comes to people, leading people, bringing people on the team, opportunities to grow impact and influence and to add value to people and the organization. And so talk to us a little bit about that when it comes to leading a team or leading yourself or an organization.
One, you said a bias there, and leaders truly, I forget who to attribute this quote to, but leaders have a bias toward action.
They do. They do.
They're acting.
Period.
I've talked to John about my own sense of procrastination, my own criticism within myself of my procrastination. And John's really helped me. He's mentored me on it. He said, Mark, I think a lot of times procrastination is people that's looking for an excuse not to act. And he says, you have a bias to action. And he's let me off the hook sometimes with things that I think I have procrastinated on, because it's not an excuse to not act, because I too, and you do too, Chris, we have a bias for action. Yeah. We're not just sitting around wondering if today's going to be a work day or if tomorrow we're going to wait until next week. Yeah. There's a bias to action that I want to make sure that we don't miss here. You underscored that, and let me just kind of put it in bold and in parentheses, because leaders have a bias to action. This sensing and seizing, or seeing and seizing opportunity, I think that we as leaders, we need to understand something. John's sensed and seized a lot of opportunities, and many of them, he would give a very high percentage. I think it's not true. He would say 70% of his opportunities that he sensed and tried to seize didn't work out. Here's what I love about John. And I think this is something to underscore for all of us about procrastination. Many people procrastinate because they want perfection, and others procrastinate because they fear rejection or failure.
That's good.
What John doesn't fear rejection or failure. I've been with him dozens, hundreds maybe, of times to where an opportunity that he sensed and seized before anybody else didn't work out, and he goes, oh, Mark, I thought that would work out. Look, here's another opportunity. There is no rear view mirrors. So leaders,
that's good.
Those of us, and I put myself in the camp of all those that are learning this lesson and going, oh, I'm guilty. Those of us that are procrastinating, I think we really need to identify what is the reason, what's the purpose, what's the source behind our procrastination. Is it a fear of failure? You need to move on because you need to move on the opportunity. Yeah. Because if it does fail, learn from it and go to the next opportunity. And I love that about John. He can be so quick, because if it doesn't work out, he's quick to forget it, forgive himself, and move to the next opportunity.
Yeah. That makes me think of a statement that I've heard where they say the future is built one imperfect step at a time. Right? It's not going to be perfect. And so since we're confessing here and we're talking about how you've even helped me with this because you are a bias to action, and I am as well, in a little bit of a different process. And you came to me and you said, hey, I want to do a little bit of an exercise. And this is going to lead into the 3 Ps that John gives us and how we can help our team members with this. Because if you are listening to us and you say, I'm in John's camp and I don't procrastinate at all, I'm not saying you have a bias. You may be that way, but there may be some of it. But if you don't, I promise you there are people on your team inside your circle of influence and those you want to add value to that do it. And so we're going to transition into some ways to help them with the 3 Ps. And so as I get there, it brought me back to an exercise you had me do, which was, you understand how I'm wired, you understand how I process things, and the perception is that can come across as procrastinating. Right. There could be a little bit of a quicker action to it. And you said, hey, here's what I want you to do for the next couple of weeks. When I give you an opportunity, or you sense an opportunity, or there's something to do, I want you to just put your initial reaction down on a piece of paper. What would you have done? What did that look like? And then I want you to put that in the drawer, and then you might have very kindly said, go through your laborious process, slow, all that kind of stuff, get to action. And then I want you to say, what was it that I did? And then I want you to pull out that piece of paper and say, what was your initial reaction? And could you have saved some time? And over 90% of the time they were identical. And so it really helped me go, hey, you can move a little bit faster. Your steps can be imperfect. We're okay with failure around here. I love that. And so it really helped me go through that. And the reason I share that is because as we transition into these 3 Ps that I want you to talk a little bit about, that John talks about, that can help stop procrastinating, you got to make sure that your team they understand their purpose and their why and how that is tied to the organization and what they're doing. That, especially now in the generation we're working, that is so important to some of the generations.
Hey, so we're going to get into the P's.
Okay.
I saw you right there look down at your notes, so I wanted to interrupt. Did I really tell you to do that?
Yes.
That was a great idea.
It was brilliant.
I was concerned. I was concerned that Chris had his own idea and he was giving me credit because he's always trying to build me up. But that's a great idea. And I want to underscore that, Chris, because Chris is a processor. He's the best processor on our team. And I'm not just saying that because you're in studio with us and because you're bigger than me. Both of those are true. But that's not why I'm saying that. He is, even by test and assessments. We do the Maxwell Leadership Assessment, which is a great tool. By the way, if we could put that in the show notes, the Maxwell Leadership Assessment, it will help you. Chris is by far the best processor on my team. Chris is a processor, yet he is a hungry, humble, smart leader. Pat Lencioni's 3 attributes of an ideal team player. And Chris wants to lead. He wants to be at the front edge of things. And if you're a processor like Chris, if you're a guy or a gal that needs to analyze what's happening, that's okay. We need you on our teams. Please don't change. Please don't change. We need you. At the same time, if you want to grow in your intuition on sensing and seizing opportunity, I love this idea and I want to underscore it. Thank you for giving me credit for this. Write down your initial thoughts. Don't tell anybody because that would be mortality, wouldn't it, Chris, to put yourself out there like that as a processor. Put your initial thought down, put it in a drawer somewhere, and then go do your normal processing and then come back and see if that gut feeling is accurate. And here's why. And I'm going to underscore this and then we're going to go to the
No, you're good.
The reason is because if you want to grow in this area, then it's not about somebody else being right about an opportunity and you being wrong or you needing to process or procrastinate and it's sitting in your drawer. It's everybody needs some wins to get good at sensing and seizing opportunity. You need quick wins. And for you processors, a quick win is looking if your initial thought was right or not, and it will help you. That's great. That'll help a lot of processors on the call on the thing today.
It was no doubt something that you asked me to do, which is such a brilliant idea. That's why I asked you to join me on the podcast today in regards to this so we can work through this, right? But going back to this purpose thing, I don't want to miss this. As we begin thinking about helping those in our influence in the teams that we're working with, when you can connect the purpose and their why to what the organization is doing or their task and cast that vision, you're going to help them procrastinate a whole lot less. And then John talks about, and I want to stop on this next one and let you kind of talk a little bit about it, is from a priorities standpoint. And I was with an organization yesterday, and we were doing John's Today Matters content, and we were working through it. And one of the things that John talks about in Today Matters is you have to have a plan. You have to have an actionable plan. Don't just react to the day. Don't get in there, be proactive. And when you do that, that will help you when it comes to not procrastinating when you go through this plan. So talk a little bit about it from a priority standpoint in order to keep you from being perceived as procrastinating, or maybe you are procrastinating.
You know, John has a chapter, and we need to put this in the show notes, but John has a chapter in Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. He has a second chapter actually on procrastination, on priorities really, but it deals with procrastination. And he talks about the 3 R's. We've talked about it on the podcast. I won't go through that at this point, but it's really taking assessment on what is going on your calendar and what are the results of that. And I have found that leaders that have a bias to action and a passionate desire for production will focus on the things that give the greatest return in the quickest amount of time, right? Guilty, anyone? Me,
Yes.
I'm guilty. We're all guilty. I think that really going through a process of identifying what is your purpose, what are your priorities, what is your passion will help you do a better job of what you're really procrastinating on and what should be eradicated from your schedule altogether. For instance, for years, I'm not proud of this, for years I have been terrible at email. Don't say amen. At email response. John says 24 hours, 24 hours. I'm like, I can't do that and get all that done. And John said, Mark, it's because you're trying to do something that is not giving you the greatest return on your time. Now, it's connecting with people and being a good communicator and connecting and loving on people, a good use of my time. Absolutely. That is the purpose of my time. But if I get caught up in all the emails and the junk and all that, and so I altered the responsibilities of people on my team. I'm blessed to have an executive partner, an executive assistant, all or not. Some of you are not blessed at this point yet, but find people on your team that you can move communication elements so that communication still happens and valuing people still happens, but it's not on your list because you have went through your purpose, your priorities, and your passions to make sure that you are focusing on the right thing. And I have found that some people's procrastination is because the things they're procrastinating on should have never been on their calendar in the first place.
Yeah, that's good.
So make sure, as we're really trying to apply John's lesson with this greatest gap that I'm convicted with, that you really are procrastinating on things that what you're procrastinating on are things that should be in your life or things that should be quickly moved to to someone else in the organization.
Yeah, and I think what you're telling us is we got to manage that. As we kind of started off, there's a tendency that we have as leaders in certain areas, and it'll reduce our credibility. It'll reduce our influence. You and I were talking about this right before we went live, and even across the organization, it could be a negative influence because there's some perceptions of what the delay is happening there. It made me think of the statement where you lead where you're strong, you set up a process, a system, or a team where you're weak.
Love that.
And that's what you've done, right? With your executive partner, in the fact that you do have her help with emails and those kind of things. And I just wanted to bring that back up again so I could say amen to your emails. But I got to be careful because I have the same problem when it comes to that. So the last part I want you to talk about, and I see this when John talks about the fact that you are so biased to action, right? You have a passion for what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to these 3 Ps and making sure that your team understands and is aligned with these 3 Ps for what they're doing, that helps you not procrastinate as much. It helps you manage it better. Talk about the things that you're passionate about and what we're doing as an organization that just drives you to action in a hurry.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that. It's so fun to do these podcasts with you, Chris. And I mean that. I say that off mic. Let me say it on mic
thank
now.
you. I enjoy being here.
I do. I love it. There's just this real connection we have in what we're trying to do. So the things that I'm getting ready to answer are the things that Chris would answer if the question was reversed back to him, because we really have a good team. I'm really passionate about continuing this incredible impact John Maxwell has had on this world. It's staggering, Chris. I meet with presidents. 2 weeks ago, I was in the Dominican Republic meeting with the president, the Congress, the Minister of Education in schools, doing some really cool things. And then we went and was with 8,000 leaders in Spokane, Washington, right outside Everett, Washington. And what I get to do on a daily basis blows me away if I had no responsibilities to execute on it or to carry it into the future, because I have lived a rich and fulfilled life of seeing the work of my hands impact others. I've shared in these podcasts. I'll share today a story of impact that we've had through this podcast. I cannot believe it, but I'm not satisfied with today. Yesterday's experience in Dominican Republic, tomorrow's experience in Romania, those things are not what energizes me and gets me passionate. All of those are great. Those are just credibility or inspiration to what my real passion is. And that is, this has to continue.
Yeah.
This has to be bigger, better, and brighter 50 years from now. John told me something, Chris, very interesting in Dubai. When he looked at me, I was working through some pretty big challenges. I was taking them very personally. He said, Mark, you know what? Don't even do this next opportunity. Don't do this, because I'm going to be honest with you. My legacy, my future does not depend on you doing it. And it was a very freeing moment. He wasn't being sarcastic. It was a very freeing moment. He said, by the way, don't take that personal. It doesn't depend on me. It's not mine. It's for something bigger, something more significant than me. And it's understanding that significance, Chris, that really drives me in the good days, and I'm a pretty emotional person, and in the difficult days. Recently, I was in the Dominican Republic, and I was working through a big problem, and I went, wow, if I don't figure out the solution to this problem, this whole ability to be bigger, better, and brighter for significance for others could totally be impacted by this. It's one of the heaviest weeks I've had in a long time. And I think that passion that I'm talking about of really keeping it what John is doing. One of the things, and this is what's remarkable that made me make a comment about me and you and doing this together. A few moments ago, I talked about the Maxwell Leadership Assessment, and we're going to put that in the show notes. But Chris, one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about is getting the message of 5 levels and getting the message of corporate environments that can be the best company for the world, not just the best company in the world.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to do that. You and I are sitting in our hands with proven solutions that will make team environments, corporations better. We do it every day. We've got about we got over 100 plus clients right now that are bringing us in with our corporate solutions to make us better. And just this week, you and I were reviewing feedback from our podcast listeners. Do you know that over 95% of our podcast viewers, our podcast listeners, have at least one, if not 500, 1,000 people reporting to them? And yet you and I will finish this podcast. You'll go upstairs and you'll work with a team that can help them create an environment like this. And I'm super passionate about it. Can you provide a way for our podcast listeners to help us, allow us to come in and partner with them to make these kind of environments work for them?
Yeah, I'd love to. And this is what we do, right? We get into rooms with leaders and teams and departments, and we help them understand that some do procrastinate and that others need to be led differently. All the things we talk about every week on this podcast, we get to go and live it out inside organizations. Just like my example, we were with one yesterday and had an incredible time with their team of 100 people up in Providence. But if they'll go to maxwellleadership.com, and we have a place there for corporate training, they'll click on that. They'll see all kinds of different content, workshops, coaching, and they can submit a form. And Jake will put a link to that in our show notes as well.
Yeah, and then there's another thing that you do in addition to this podcast. You have our executive podcast. Tell us how to find that.
Yeah, same place, maxwellleadership.com/podcast. And both of our podcasts are on there, and they can subscribe to both of them.
If you're leading more than one person, if you're leading some people, I hope you'll keep listening to this podcast, and I know you will because of the personal growth and development that you have. But I hope you'll go and help and allow Chris and his team. That's what I'm passionate about, Chris. Allow Chris and his team to work with you. Some of you won't be quite ready. Others of you were ready about a month ago. You've been procrastinating. Let's go. Let's move on this because we really, really can help. It takes me to a listener comment that we had that I want to talk about. This is from Robert. And Robert listened to the podcast episode, Building a Diverse Team. Great podcast. I remember that. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Building a diverse team. And Robert said, I love the idea of using contrarians. Remember us talking about that. He said, I always think of leaders who surround themselves with yes women or yes men. I think of it as a group of bobbleheads that just start nodding without thinking. For years, when I've led projects, I've always asked a close associate on the project team to be the contrarian of the project. I love this. I love this, Robert. Their job is to disagree with everything and keep the group from developing into a groupthink model. I love the podcast. Keep it up. Signed, Robert. And Robert, you not only listen, you not only gave us affirmation, man, you gave us inspiration and instruction on how to assign a contrarian to every project. Thank you for that, Robert. By the way, Chris, and we'll put it in the show notes, gave you a great way to come in and help your team with some corporate training solutions. One of the things that I love about people like Robert and other people that listen to the podcast, you take the podcast on Wednesday and you use it as your team development strategy. You bring your teams together. You listen to this podcast. I know you do it because on Wednesday we have this download rate. And then by Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the people, those leaders of you that are using it to train your people, they go and download it themselves. So take our podcast. It's free. Use it. Use it for a team development time. Pass it along. Help others, because in the process of helping others, you help us fulfill our mission of adding value to people who will multiply value to others. Hey, do me a favor today. I want you to take this lesson. I want you to go and I want you to make powerful, positive change, because everyone deserves to be led well.